I made it. It's 2019. Still here. Still have a channel. Missed the mark of, landing feet first and hitting the ground running into the first month of 2019. But I'm here. Let's get it. This video is going to get real meta. A video about advice from a guy that gives advice. I can already feel my brain falling into layers of itself. But anyway, before I'm seizing on the floor, trapped in my own mind and falling further, let's talk about it. Advice. Guidance or recommendations offered with regard to prudent future action. I built this channel on the thought of sharing with the world a 22-year-old's point of view and accumulated life experience. To give out fun anecdotes to help the world get along. Not to state that I'm some divine being of knowledge, or not to state that I'm God's gift of knowledge to the world, just adding my piece to the puzzle that is life, trying to help people along if they choose to come here and get help. Now, with the pretty much explanation of my channel out of the way again, for I don't know how many times I've talked about it, but it's fun to talk about. Let's get on with the video. Advice, for all its good-natured intent, is a complicated thing. It has many sides, many branches, many different versions of itself that exist, that it's kind of hard to pinpoint which ones to listen to, follow, reject, and just generally take with a grain of salt. So I'm going to use this video to try to break that down, because it's a very vast ocean when it comes to advice. Let's start with advice from loved ones. Advice from loved ones has two sides already. Starting at the gate, it's split like a fork. There's advice from them knowing you long enough and knowing your goals and aspirations and trying to help you along. And then there's opinionated advice based on what they want for you and what they want to see you do. 9 times out of 10, I will tell you, listen to both advices, of course. Listen to both advices. Let them enter your mind, think on them, and, live your life from there with more knowledge in your pocket. But if the opinionated advice is exactly what it is, opinionated advice, your obligation to take that is lowered. Your obligation to take any advice is however high you give it, but if it's opinionated and you don't see it working into the aspect of your current stature, of your current life path, by all means, don't take it. You're not obligated to listen to all the advice or take all the advice you hear. But listening to it does give you a more open-minded perspective on the world. Taking it is another story. Now, with opinionated advice can still have the good nature of, I know you well enough to know that there are things you might want to do. But sometimes you got to realize, is the advice them really wanting something for you, or a vicarious sense of, if I have you do this thing, I don't have to do this thing, or I would feel like I've already done this thing because I've made them do it. Like if somebody advises you to buy a sports car, but they don't buy a sports car, but they like sports cars. It's kind of a situation where they will live vicariously through you having a sports car with no other rhyme or reason backing up the fact that you should get a sports car. You could be a new father or new mother, and people can be like, get a sports car. And it's kind of like, I have a child. I don't need to be worrying about driving fast, obviously. So there are situations and examples that are generally well known and well seen to be either disregard pile or put in the back of your mind for later pile. Now, another example is if you ask for advice and it's given to you, you would only assume, or the person giving you the advice would only assume that you're there to get advice that you plan on taking into action. For example, if you ask for directions to a place and somebody gives you directions to a place, you're not going to still go your own way, I would hope, because that just sounds like you're stubbornly going against the grain to go against the grain. Ask for advice has a higher level of I plan on taking this in than originally planned. Because you should go into every advice with a 50-50 mentality. This is going to either help me or it's going to not be relevant and I don't need it. Like somebody telling you to dye your hair. That's an opinionated piece of advice. They would like to see you with a certain color hair. You might even like the color and they suggested the advice because you like the color and you want to do something with your hair. But that is not exactly asking for directions and getting advice, or asking someone to teach you how to do taxes or drive a car or how to handle relationships. That advice versus opinionated advice, you kind of have to shift your scales to manage. But before I get more confusing, just know that there's advice that is a definite, you asked for it, you want it, you plan on taking it, and advice given to you that has a chance of being completely disregarded because it appeals to you in no way in the slightest, or is so on the nose about your personality, you're like, wow, thank you for enlightening me of this opportunity, path, and option. Because I wasn't thinking about this prior to that. So don't disregard advice like, oh, I'm all high and mighty and I don't need help, or your help doesn't seem like it works for my situation, so screw your help. Take everything into consideration. Yes, there's opinions versus general, here's a fact backed up by another fact in which I'm standing my advice upon. So in retrospect, in hindsight, and all those words that mean present, past, future, etc., advice is yours to do with what you will. But you should always be willing to listen. Because the moment you stop listening to advice, the moment you feel like you are God's gift of knowledge and you are the pinnacle of knowing what you need to do with your life, you're going to miss opportunities. Things are going to pass you by and you're just going to sit here like, well, my life doesn't seem as interesting as it could be. And the biggest loss is not the person giving the advice. Yes, they're losing time. In some cases, it might feel like they've wasted time on you and it hurts their feelings to know that you want advice or they've given advice that you completely disregard or go so far left, you're doing the complete opposite thing. But you're losing out in the grand scheme of things more so if you choose to just become the most hard-headed, I do things my own way, it's my way or the highway type of mindset. Everybody needs to stay open-minded because advice has so many different parameters that make it good or bad. It's like branches, it's like trees, it's like 20-sided die. There are many different shapes, colors, and sizes for advice. You yourself have to take enough advice in to realize that there is a pattern and realize that there is a way to assess advice. Now that I've given you my advice, here, I do with it what you will. Me, I want to share a little knowledge with you because, as I stated, this is also a little bit of fun anecdotes from some 22-year-old in Florida. I have an interesting relationship with advice. listening to it, I always consider advice, even if my facial expression at the time may be like, I don't see why you're giving me this, and I do not understand why you felt the need to share, but I'm always listening to advice. But I kind of have a kryptonite or Achilles heel or weakness when it comes to advice. If I'm in the situation that I've given it because you've asked for it, and you go so far left as to be doing the complete opposite thing, or it just doesn't help your life, and then you find yourself in a worse off position because it doesn't help, that makes me feel stupid. It's kind of like you didn't believe in me or trust me enough to take said advice. And that is a stance many people can take. So if you're wondering why somebody that used to give you a lot of advice has slowly stopped, the question you should be asking yourself is, are you listening? Not to call anybody that's listening to this video a non-listener because you're listening to this video. It's kind of self-explanatory, but a person's willingness to give you help is based on your willingness to accept it. That's why I said keep an open mind, because if you're not open-minded, people are going to not be open-minded with you. They're going to close off that pathway that connects you to his people and helps you grow and build with and off each other. So never lose somebody for the sake of disregarding advice, not listening, not being there, not trying to accept things for their situations and their multi-changing situations. Always be open-minded. Always be willing to listen. Just because you listen doesn't mean you have to do the thing. But listening makes all the difference, where just rejecting it from the jump before they even get a word out, you only burn bridges. Love you all. Welcome back to the channel. Sorry I've been away. As I said, this video went through a lot of rough drafting and rewriting and stuff because I'm normally an off the top of the dome, talk as I am on camera type of guy. But sometimes, you need a draft, you need a skeleton to go off of, or you're rambling. Although I do kind of like the rambling because I'm not exactly here to be the guy that's like, this is law, believe it. So being a normal human being, I'm going to go on and go on. If I have a platform to talk, I'm going to want to talk, because normally I'm not the person that's the most talkative in the world if you catch me out there just walking in Walmart or something. So I use this platform to, talk more than I normally do, explain more of my thoughts and ideas than I normally do. So if you're here, I appreciate the fact that you came to listen. I love you all. I will talk to you next time I have a video. Hopefully it won't be another month from now, because YouTube is not the type of place that you can post monthly uploads and still have relevancy unless you're a storytime animator or you do something so popular people are on the edge of their seat waiting for you. 22-year-old giving advice doesn't seem to be there yet, but I plan on making it there. If y'all are along for the ride, I will appreciate it. I love you again. I don't know how many times I want to say that before I end this video, so let me just end this video. I will talk to y'all later. See ya.